however you would like. So the basics. Opening a file. Opening a file in Python is actually quite easy. It's a function that returns a file object. And a file object is sort of a pointer to that file. And the reason that's important is because it's not actually the file that you're working with. So when I say my file equals open filename.txt, my file doesn't actually equal that file. My file is a pointer that represents that file. The difference being that if my program crashes midway through doing something to that file, this could end up corrupt or partially written to or whatever if it was the actual file. But because it's a pointer, it saves it a little bit. It's a buffer, a layer of protection for that file. So open takes two parameters. The first one being the file name or the path to the file that you wish to open, including the file extension. The easiest way to open a file is to put it in the same directory as your Python script. In that case, you just put the name of the file. If your file exists somewhere else on the computer, then you will be using the path to that file, which can be a little bit confusing or convoluted in Windows because Windows has really complex paths. Like if you've ever looked at the path to your desktop, for example, it's like C:// Windows/users/desktop. Like it's a big long path. But you can, if you want to do that, you can. Also be careful, because if you put in a path to, let's say, a systems file, you can actually open that. It's not going to stop you. That's why your computer sometimes warns you if you try to download a Python script, because a Python script can get in and blow up your computer. Like you can literally write a virus that will infect your computer in Python. Fun stuff. So the first parameter is the file name or the path to the file. For the purpose of what you're doing in this class, I would suggest making those files and putting them in your same directory. Just keep it simple on yourself for now. You can always get more complicated later. The second parameter is a string that represents the method of opening the file, basically telling Python what you're going to do with the file. And there are a few different basic flags that you can use here, basic values that you can use here. I'm not going to tell you all of them. I'm going to tell you the basics, because some of the others are not directly relevant yet. So I'll tell you things on a sort of as you need to know basis. But the most important ones, R is read. Okay. So if you're going to read from a file, if you're getting information from that file, you're going to use R. Now, if you do this and then you try and write something to that file, it will give you an error. If you do this and the file doesn't exist, it will give you an error. So R is important to note that that file needs to exist. Append and write both do something fairly similar. Okay. The append will add to the end of a file. Think of it like a diary. So each time you open that file, it will open that file, and then you can add something more to what's already there. It won't replace what's already there. Okay? Write is to write to a file. If the file exists already, it will overwrite whatever's in the file. See, this is one where you want to be a little bit careful, because it will blow away whatever's in that file the minute you start writing to it. Okay? So just be careful, because if you use this on let's say a system file and you blow away that information, there's no undo for that. Okay? And then create will is like write in that it will write to a file, but it only works if the file doesn't exist. So you can think of create as the safe version of write. There are plenty of instances, though, where you want to use write. You just have to really pay attention to what you're doing. One of the reasons why I encourage you to only use text files in your Python directory, because then you're not going to be messing around with stuff that you don't want. So when I'm using this in code, let's just comment those out for now. We don't need to worry about those. But if I want to take this and let's say I want to open that for reading purposes. Okay, so I'm going to open that. And if I run that, it doesn't really do anything visible because all I've done is create a file object, right? So if I say print, you remember our friend the type function? If I print the type, it's called a text IO wrapper, which basically means it's something you can use for input and output to a file. So if I want to, what happens if I print that file object? Okay, so I printed, I'm not printing the contents of the file. That's what you might think about when you say, I opened a file and I want to print it, so I'm just going to print the file. What you're doing is you're actually printing the object. Remember, this is a pointer that points to a file. So there's the wrapper. We've got the name of the file, the mode, the encoding. That's useful information, but it's not what we necessarily want. We want to print the contents of the file. So what we have to think about next is